welcome to the big one, Peter Lord, starting our day at Animation Dingle, the 9th Animation Dingle. It's not Peter's first time in Dingle. You were here about 4 or 5 years ago, Peter. You gave a keynote address that I think brought not only all of the guests at Animation Dingle down to the Skelligs, but I think half of the town, where you held every man, woman, and child in the palm of your hand for 45 minutes. And in the other palm, there was Morph. And you documented your adventures, the two of you, as you went around the town and added your special light. It's such fond memories of that. And, I'm just here to introduce you, but you don't really need an introduction. I know that there's an awful lot that you're going to get through over the next 45 minutes or so. You're going to get through about 45 years of creativity. So I'm going to step out of the way. I'm just going to say to everybody that there's questions for Peter are going to be on the top right, or should be that way. And so just type them in and I'll come in at the end and I'll field them for you. And then there's chat down at the bottom. But if you've got any questions for Peter, please type them into the top right. And over to you, sir. Welcome back, and congratulations, by the way, on your latest Academy Award nomination.
Yeah, that was nice. Yeah, that was good. Thank you, John. Thanks so much. Yeah. So, morning, everyone. Hello. So, yes. Can I get the first slide? I think I'll be more comfortable when I can see that. I'm going to have to cue Scott, the invisible Scott, to put the new slides up. But first one, Scott. Oh, well, here they come. Imagine it's there. Oh, here we go. So yes, as John was cleverly hinting, I called it 45 years of creativity. I've also variously called it 45 years of fun and stuff like that. And this is going to be a very quick scamper through Aardman and what we do, but I'm trying not to make it just historical, because I think that's a little bit boring, actually, and I don't want to do that. But there are historical elements to it, so I'm going to try and cover an entire career in 45 minutes, and let's see how it goes. So we'll start, as we often start, we'll start with a show reel. This is perfectly normal, but the one I'm going to show you is kind of surprising. I think it's surprising. So, Scott, would you run the show reel, please? There we go, guys. So I said surprising. I mean, what I mean is surprising because in that reel that we just saw, was there any Wallace and Gromit? No. Was there Shaun the Sheep? No, there wasn't. That was a reel designed for our commercials business, which is still part of Aardman today. So Aardman today, we do short films, games, TV series, feature films, TV adverts, conventional TV adverts, and just about anything else that occurs to us. So we do, that's been our business model, if I may use the term business model. That's what we've always done, is try to cover a huge range of things, and it's worked for us. And TV commercials, I don't suppose there was much there you recognised. Some of you may have seen a thing we did for Greenpeace with turtles that was quite that got around quite a lot. Oh, a rather nice thing for Coldplay, the song called Daddy, that was in there as well. But you know, it's not stuff you'd know, and stuff that we do in little shorts, commercials, bits of educational stuff are not well known. I know that, which is partly why I showed it, just for a change of scene. So now, oh, by the way, cheers, guys. Essential. So this picture here is the youthful Pete and Dave, me and my partner Dave Sproxton, when we were about, I guess we were 17. So I suppose that's actually, in a sense, 50 years ago. Shocking, but still, I think it might be 50 years ago. And we are experimenting with animation, and we look happy, which is a good thing. And in the middle of the picture is a film camera. Some of you will have seen these things, 16mm film camera that was our tool, the thing that enabled us to animate. And that strange wooden structure around us, held together with little clamps, tells me that we were shooting what was then conventional, two-dimensional cell animation. Can we get the next picture, please? So this is just to take you back to that period. So we're talking about the very late 60s. We were experimenting with animation, which was then extremely rare. I mean, now you're all out there. You're all out there animating. There's hundreds of schools worldwide. God knows how many schools there are. I don't know how many there are in Ireland, but plenty. There's lots of schools teaching animation. And I know from my Twitter feed that there's loads of people out there that are sending me short films that they've made at home on the kitchen table and so on. So it's everywhere. It's fantastic, and I love that. Back in the extremely late 60s, it was very unusual, and you didn't see much, and very few people were doing it. It was a weird, esoteric activity. And this image is from a TV series called The Magic Roundabout by a Frenchman called Serge Dano. And it was very popular in Britain back in the 60s because it had quite a modern adult feel to it, actually, despite the appearance. But this sort of thing with little puppets with huge heads pottering around in an animated world, that was common, that was normal. And I think if we, as young guys, as young 17-year-olds, if we had any vision of the future in mind, it would be to make something like this. Next slide, please. So this slide is having mentioned the Magic Roundabout and said we were inspired and motivated by that to do animation, then this guy is Ray Harryhausen. Ray Harryhausen, I hope you all know his name. He did the animation for a whole series of extraordinary fantasy and sci-fi kind of feature films in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And that monkey he's got is not King Kong, it's Mighty Joe Young, but Ray Harryhausen was influenced by the original King Kong film back in the 30s, and he became a phenomenon. This guy Ray Harryhausen, absolutely amazing, a brilliant animator and a one-man industry. Extraordinary what he achieved on his own. If you look at a movie now, look at any effects movie, and the special effects credits will run for 3 minutes as they cross screen, because there's so many of them. Back in the day, what Ray did covered all those credits, which is to say he designed the characters, he built the characters, he animated the characters, he did the compositing, which was then done with back projection. So he was a phenomenon. And next slide, please. And this film that he made, this is I guess, the favorite, the absolute classic, Jason and the Argonauts. Ray animated those skeletons, which, if anyone's done puppet animation, you will understand how fantastic, impressive that was, and inspiring to me. I saw this film when I was about 12 or something like that, and did I know I was watching puppet animation? No, I didn't. But I knew I was watching something phenomenal, something quite extraordinary, and in that sense, I was affected by it. Next slide, please. We moved into when we started animating. I've shown you Magic Roundabout. I've shown you Ray Harryhausen. We didn't work in either of those styles. We started to work in modeling clay and plasticine. And this cartoon, which is just a joke, is a remarkably true joke, I think, because when you animate with plasticine, you really are a god. I mean, not a very good god, but you are a god. You build a world, you populate it, you make it live, you give it a character, and all of this on your kitchen table, and it is a great feeling. And I'm sure that's really why people love doing puppet animation in particular. This incredible sense of power. I'm going to show you a very quick clip now, so let's just play that, please, while I drink. So that was a fairly random clip from a film called Clay, or The Origin of the Species, by a man called Elliot Noyes. And it's very interesting to show it to you because Dave and I saw this on TV back in the very late 60s, I think. And we knew nothing about it because I don't think they showed the whole thing. They didn't show any credits. It was shown out of context. It was on a kids magazine program. We saw it and we thought, oh, bloody hell, that's plasticine. What a great idea. And that is kind of the end of the story because, that's the beginning of the story. All it did was it gave us the inspiration, to use that fancy word, or the kick up the arse, or it turned on the motor for our whole career. Glimpsing that film by an unknown director, seeing it once only, and not then seeing it again for the next 40 years or something. That gave us the idea to animate with plasticine, which became our special thing. And I mention this to you particularly because it's so important to be influenced by people. It's the most natural thing in the world. You're going to see something and you think that's brilliant, and probably when you're young, you just try and copy it, and then as you evolve and your talent evolves, you start to do different things with it. But I'm a huge fan of that. And I love the fact that this guy, who I never knew, although I met him once actually, had an idea, played with it. It was a lovely idea, and we picked it up like a relay race where you take the baton from the next guy. It was like that, I think. And there's a lot of that in the world of animation, and I think it's a thing absolutely to celebrate. So the next slide is what we did with it. Actually, hang on. I knew I'd have the real thing around somewhere. There's always one. So Morph is what we did with that material. Quite different to what Elliot Noyes had done. We made a little character, and he was created 45 years ago. He was our first sort of full-time creation, and he's still going strong, I'm happy to say, and I like him very much. And the reason he works and has worked, I think, is because he's a character. And we've had the luxury of evolving that character. I'm not going to say over 45 years, that's ridiculous. But really, within the first 2 years of his animation life, we did 50 little short stories. And in doing those, we found that he wasn't just a lump of plasticine, but he was a person with a character. And of course, that's what we love. We love the most important thing that we do as animators, as far as I'm concerned, the most important thing is we are storytellers. That's number one. And I think being filmmakers is number two. And one of those tools of being storytellers and filmmakers is character. Because when a storyteller can engage you with a character, then he's done more than half the work, I think. Once you care about the character, understand the character, we've had that luxury. Okay, so now I really am rushing. That's deliberate, and I'm going to jump startlingly from Morph, who, as I say, here he is, our first ever creation. I'm going to jump towards the end. So next slide, please. And so this mob of people here, I've never actually bothered to count, actually, is most of the crew of the Pirates movie that we made 10 years ago. So you get a good sense that it's a pretty big operation. And while we were making this film, The Pirates, we were also making TV commercials. We were still doing some short films and some other kids' work as well. So at the time we made this film, we must have been employing at least 400 people, I think, probably a few more. So that was us in 2011. Next slide, please. I'm now going to take us back in time. So that's the entire crew. We're obviously celebrating Nick winning an Oscar for A Close Shave. And so this is actually before we got into the feature film business. That's the whole crew. Go back. Next slide, please. This is the whole crew when we moved to a new studio, new to us, down by the dockside in Bristol. And next slide, please. Here's the whole crew. I think this must be about 1988, I should think. And the next one, please. And here's the whole crew in about 86. Although I say the whole crew, I don't know where Nick Parker's got to. He should be there. But anyway, basically the whole crew in 86. And the next one. So this is the entire team in 1983, with me in the middle, Dave on the right, and on the left is a guy called Richard Starzak, also known as Golly, who was our first employee and the guy who sort of eventually took on the mantle of Shaun the Sheep. And the next slide, please. So there we are, back to the start. So I don't know. Somehow seeing all those people disappearing was more interesting to me than seeing them appearing. But just to show, to give you a sense of the massive change of scale, but with me and Dave at the heart of it, in the middle of it all. It was our project, and we pushed ahead. We did what we could. We kept changing our ground. It's been an interesting thing. So having started with kids animation, next slide, please. We made a series of short films. This is a very funny one called Creature Comforts, but we did some dead serious ones as well, actually. So short films that were made for Channel 4 or for the BBC. And this film rather conveniently won an Oscar, which was which was good for us. And the next slide, please. I've mentioned earlier on TV commercials. You know, as I said then, very important to us and very important to the economy of the company. There was a time, and this one is in, I guess, the very late 80s, when, frankly, TV commercials were extremely well paid. I'm not saying they weren't. They were very, very well paid. We would go into a meeting back in those days and say, "Oh, here's our budget for 30,000 quid," and they'd say, "Oh, I think it should be a bit higher," which I can tell you never happens these days, but it used to happen back then. They'd be, make sure you're making plenty of profit. They used to say. "Oh, okay, good plan." So and that money that we made really sort of, it set us up very well. It set us up so that we could buy a building and that kind of thing. So I always have the greatest affection for that world. And the next slide, please. The next one represents TV series. Also a very nice story, I think, because Shaun the Sheep in the middle of this lot was created by Nick Park, the character. He appeared in Close Shave, and then we forgot about him for about a decade. And then somebody said, maybe there's a series in this character. And the guy I mentioned before, Richard Starzak, took those words as his challenge and devised this grouping of people, this family, that Shaun the Sheep and his pals, which is now a very large part of our income, actually. All the associated rights from Shaun, from distributing it and from merchandising and stuff like that, is a big chunk of our business. With our business, which, as I've said before, sits on different bases, on games, features, series, rights, and so on. And next slide, please. I mentioned games. This was a very interesting one we did, working in collaboration with Bandai Namco and a French company called DigiArt, and it's called 1111. And although it's about the First World War, it's definitely not a shoot 'em up. It's a story. It's a game with a very strong story, and we tried its look is a very interesting experiment in making it look like a sort of a living impressionist painting. And now, we're still trying to develop games more, partly because we have people that want to do it. There's people at Aardman, of course, who are the biggest gamers, and they've been doing, and they want us to make a great game, and we're always pushing. And this film, 1111, was a kind of a breakthrough. And the next one, please. So from 1111 to Robin Robin, and this is a film we made for Netflix. Hurrah for Netflix, we love them. And it's puppet animation, and it's directed by Mikey Please and Dan Ojari. It was designed for Christmas 2020, but COVID intervened, so the whole thing got stopped and bumped and restarted. So now it will be released Christmas this year. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's drop dead beautiful looking film. 30 minutes, Christmas special. Robin Robin. And the next one, please. And this is a killer series that, well, we haven't made it yet, but when it's made, it will be a killer series. This is Lloyd of the Flies. Well, as far as I'm concerned, that sells it. I mean, anything that's called Lloyd of the Flies is good enough for me. It's created and directed by Matt, whose name is Flo. Anyway, just another wonderful talent. CG series. So you see my theme here, diversification. So stop frame series, CG series, stop frame movie, CG movie, anything's up for grabs. And the next one, please. Okay, yes. So on that list, which I just mentioned, movies, we've made 8. Yeah, 8 fully animated movies now. I think 4 of them have been nominated for Oscars. That's pretty good. 1 of them won. That's pretty good. And the next slide, please. I just wanted to indulge my enthusiasm and take you briefly behind the scenes of the studio, because a stop motion studio, believe me, friends, is a thing of wonder. And I'm sorry to say that any other studio is disappointing in comparison, because you've just got, well, you know, scenes like this are everyday, commonplace scenes of extreme weirdness, of sheep being mass produced. Next one, please. That's on the set of Robin, and I don't know, to me, it just gives a glimpse of the intricacy, of the complication, of the craft and the art and the invention. Just this magnificently, it's a world, it's a creative world which is sort of super evolved somehow, and all around the world people do this. Actually, I think I take some credit for that, because when we started, it wasn't nearly so common, but now it's very common around the world. There are thousands of people involved in it around the world, but not I think tens of thousands. I don't know. And so it's a relatively small family, and people cross from one production to another and share knowledge with each other, which is a very important part of animation too. And so Mikey and Dan came and brought this project to Aardman, and with it they've brought some ideas, and we've taught them stuff, and we've just created these wonderful worlds. Next one, please. Yeah, that was from the ship from the pirates. A gorgeous prop, just a fantastic, wonderful thing. It always sailed in the CG sea, and it was a thing of wonder. And it was like a totem for the whole production. That when we were making, if I was making the pirates film, you know, and losing faith, I just go down and just gently cuddle up against the rounded hull of this glorious ship. Next one, please. That's an animated in an enormous set. This is from Farmageddon this time. Just showing off that we can build big sets as well. Next one, please. And finally, I like to get around the model making department. I love the people. I love what they do, because it's craft. You know, they're working with their hands. They're working with metal and wood and resin and paint and silicon and latex and everything. They operate in the most prodigious squalor, I like to see. And I don't know how any work gets done, but it kind of does. Well, it does get done, and God bless them. Next slide, please. I think I may perhaps have already mentioned that I love what we do. I love that studio, and of course that's a somewhat idealized view because we're not laughing the whole time. But it is like that. It is an absolute. It's a wonderland to me, and visiting the studio, visiting the animators, even if I'm not even technically on the job, is just an enormous pleasure to me, and that's a great pleasure, which I have not had in COVID. It is worth mentioning that we have kept going. We stopped for like 10 weeks as we kind of had to rethink and regroup and change the way we work. But since then, we've managed to keep going quite successfully on stop motion. I'm delighted to say. Here's a picture of Nick looking a bit pleased with some of his Oscars. It's true that winning an Oscar does you no harm in business, so I recommend it to you all. Make that your ambition. And the next one is oh yes, is as on the sort of weird spin-off things you never thought you'd be involved in. It was some of the Shaun the Sheep lands around the world. The one on the top left is a very perfect recreation of the farmhouse from Shaun the Sheep. It's perfectly done. And it sits in a sort of subtropical Japanese hillside, most surprisingly, but good fun. And the next one, please. Okay, so this is the last thing I wanted to mention. So this here is the frankly fancy headquarters building that we built for ourselves, and that's interesting in itself. I think that Dave and I, from very early on, we loved the idea of building a place that was purpose built for us. It just seemed like a natural ambition, I think, and we finally got around to it. How old is that? It must be 10 or 12 years old now. So it looks a bit grubbier than this, but it was an ambition, and we achieved it, and it's a lovely place to work. Currently virtually empty, I have to say, and I can't wait to get people back in there, because having mentioned the studio, you can imagine I'm a big fan of the human warmth that you get by bringing people together. And I don't, happy as I am to be on this Zoom call, I don't think that it's a real substitute or replacement. And I'm told that lots of people want to work remotely. Fine. Lloyd of the Flies will indeed be mostly done remotely, I know that. But I'm just a great believer in getting people together, because I think communication is so important. And the next slide. So this is inside that building, and you can see there's all sorts of merriment going on. But what it is this was the evening where we celebrated moving the company from private ownership into employee ownership. And here's an interesting conversation. So we decided to do that, Dave and I, and what it's in Britain, people often refer to the John Lewis stores that have the same model, which is to say that all the people that work there own the company, and that's how it is at Aardman now. Aardman is now owned by a trust. It's no longer owned by Dave and me. It's owned by a trust, and that trust exists for the benefit of the people in the trust, and those are all the employees. So as long as you work at Aardman, you are an owner, and nobody else is an owner. There are no outside owners. There's no big corporation anywhere wants to make a profit. Nobody. Yeah, we're not in the business of giving dividends to shareholders. That's not why we're there. The only dividends we give is in profit share to the staff, and the reason the partners, I should say, sorry, not staff, the partners, and And the reason for it really was that David and I realized that we were going to either retire or die. But I mean, you know, matter of choice. But same end result. That, you know, who's going to own the company? And the natural thing in our woeful capitalist world, the natural thing is we get bought up by some bigger company, by Disney or Time Warner or something like that, and then they would do what they wanted with the company. And that's what we didn't want. We, having started this company and grown it from actually, to the next slide, please. And the next one, please. Now, having grown it from there, you know, we just love it. You know, we just love it and care about it like a, you know, the thing that you've nurtured, like some wonderful plant you've nurtured all your life. You've nurtured this plant all your life. What you're going to do? Cut it down and sell it for firewood? I don't think so. You know, that was never what we wanted to do. So we chose the employee ownership route, and I'm very, very happy. And I was going to say, the reason I'm talking to you guys, I particularly wanted to say, think about it as an option, because we never thought about it as an option. It never occurred to us when we were starting out the company. In fact, to be absolutely frank, it never occurred to us that we owned the company. You know, I mean, I would say at parties, "Oh yes, I'm the founder of Aardman," or something. I would say, or yeah, I created Aardman. But we didn't think of ourselves as owners, as possessors of worth, although actually we were. And nobody ever mentioned the idea of employee ownership back then. We didn't hear about it until 10 years ago, I guess. But yeah, in hindsight, yeah, we could so easily have been employee owned from the very start, you know. Or when the first person joined us, that was Richard Starzak. Golly, he could have joined as a partner, but we didn't think about it then. There are lots of ways of doing it, and there is an association called the Employee Ownership Association in Britain, so you can check it out if any of you are interested. There's one more thing I don't. Oh, hello. Yes, John. One thing I don't have a slide for. Another endeavour of Aardman is the Aardman Academy, where we encourage and teach and develop the art of animation. But I'll say no more. Seeing John appearing in the screen.
I didn't mean to rush you.
That's all right. I'm rushing myself.
So many amazing takeaways for both students of animation and professionals and studio owners, and what a really generous thing that you've done with that ownership with your with the crew and the partners now in Aardman. I think that's just such a generous thing to do, because it's a very profitable, well-known company, and it goes, you know, across the film, television, shorts, ads. You've got a distribution arm as well, where
yes, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's always struck me about the people that you meet when you're going, you know, to international conferences and stuff like that, and we do bump into each other. It is, you say, quite a small community, really, is just how happy and proud people are to be working in Aardman, and you know, it's a testimony to yourself and Peter. I have a question on yourself and Peter. And you started this presentation, you bookended it with that picture back in the day of the two of you, and I'm just curious as to I suppose the evolution of your roles. You both presumably started off as artists, and you certainly continued that way. Did Peter go more the business side, or did he stay as a creative as well within the company?
Yeah, it is a good question. When we started, I was the artist. I was the artist, and Dave was the camera and lighting were his things. The thing, yeah, that was his. I mean, I'm not. He was is an entirely creative person, but camera and lighting were his things. Model making, puppets, drawing, animation were my things, and that's how it was for while, and for the first 10 years of the company, if you look at any credits, we have shared credits on everything as created, directed by the two of us. But then he unfortunately for him, he did have much more business sense than me. So he from that, actually from day one, when there were two of us in a poky little room, he would do the VAT returns if there were any VAT returns. He would do the grown-up stuff, and that what we started then continued and slowly, and he took more and more responsibility until he eventually became more clearly the managing director. And I think I know for him that there was a definite generosity and lack of selfishness in that, because being director is the best gig. It's the best gig, and he did give that up, which was generous, and it worked for us terribly well.
Brilliant. Yeah, well, it's a testament to your friendship as well. What advice would you give to anybody who's contemplating setting up an animation studio nowadays?
I am a big fan of having a partner. I mean, because we've worked that way. Okay, so it's so visibly and dramatically worked for us two that I would always recommend it to somebody else, and it's and by good luck or something, we're very different, and so instead, not two people doing the same thing, which you sometimes see in companies actually, but two people doing very different things, mutually supportive, and that whole business about employee ownership, I think that speaks to the most important part of it. The most important part which is that we felt the same way about the really important things. We just did. Like because so easily one of us could have said, well, I'm not doing this employee ownership thing. I want my 10 million quid. It could have easily gone that way. And in the years before, but we always foregrounded the creation, the thing, whether it be a film or a game or an ad or whatever it was. That was always, when we described what we do, that's what we do. We make animated. Well, we had to say animated content latterly which sounds really ugly to me, but animated films didn't quite cover it anymore.
Yeah, well, there's so many places that it can exist in now, isn't it?
Yeah. It's incredible.
But always with story at the forefront of it. There's a question in here from Amy Begley, who asks, do you find it hard at times to create stories, as in using your imagination? Do you find sometimes that ideas don't come to mind? So I guess it's, if you get a writer's block and how do you get out of it?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Of course that happens. Absolutely, it happens. I mean, practically, I'd say what I do personally is I draw. If I can't think in words, then I think in images, and I find that actually ridiculously helpful. I mean, I say, like yesterday, I was on a call, so we were doing a Zoom creative meeting, and for a very simple, very small project, and we would using some online doodling thing. I don't know what it's called. So you could doodle as you talk and you show it to each other, and I just find that if you're given an idea. It's easy to talk about Morph because he's here. If your idea is Morph encounters a full-size football, when you draw that, I find that instantly the comic potential of the idea emerges. It just emerges from drawing, not as far as I can see, from a different part of your brain, not from the logical work it out part of the brain, but something else. So the immediately it's there before you, part of your brain. Then the other completely different answer I would give is that we now, because we're obviously a big company, we do work with dozens and dozens of different writers. So it's not down to one person to have the ideas. That is shared across dozens of people.
Yeah, no, and character driving story, I suppose, a lot of the time too. And if you have the character, the story sometimes will come. One of your Chloe O'Hara mentions one of your many iconic characters, but does it by way of Peter Sallis, who played the iconic Wallace, passed away sadly in 2017. Have you ever considered recasting, or has a voice actor do as close as possible impression of Peter for future Wallace and Gromit's series or films?
Yes. Gosh, I don't think anything's announced. So he says carefully, but I can tell you that I'll only say we'll be working with someone we've been working with for a long time. Sort of Peter's understudy, effectively, but not just from way back, from 10 years ago or more. I think we had a sort of understudy, and so we'll be working with him.
Oh, brilliant! Cool. What are you most proud of, Peter? There's so much to be proud of there. What springs to mind first?
Yeah, I would say the studio as a creation. Rather than any individual creation. Personally, I'm fiercely proud of the Pirates, but that film. But no, the studio. The fact that it exists and lives and is a living organism. The fact that there are new people now doing the jobs that Dave and I have always done rather better than us, and the thought that might, the hope, the dream that might then now continue would be a wonderful thing. And you'll know this, John, and it's kind of a joke, but still, I'll say it anyway. When you look around and you see people married with 3 kids, and you think, oh, they met Aardman, didn't they? Now they've formed a real family. Sometimes one is discouraged from talking about the studio as a family, because that sounds paternalistic. But as I'm getting old and paternalistic, I think I do have that. I like the metaphor, actually. I like the thought, that the metaphor of people who are sort of codependent, and linked by affection, as so it's,
Yeah, no, totally. It's you're all on a similar journey and a path together, and everybody should benefit and grow from it. Yeah, I totally get that. Here's one, I've often wondered about this myself, is where do you put all the props?
Oh my God. That is a good one. I would say it was an effing nightmare, actually, I would say, because every new film you do, we create tons of this stuff, just stuff. Some of the sets, it's very they do go on the skip, which is, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry to say, but they do. Puppets and props we so far we keep, and we've got these storage facilities where we're full of them. But once you've got 5,000 assorted Stone Age spears and axes and things, what do you do with them? They're not the Shaun the Sheep, because its budgets are always a bit smaller, is quite good at using stuff from other productions. That's quite good. They get recycled a bit. We've got dozens actually of terraced houses for Wallace and Gromit, always ready to jump in. But it's an issue. It is, and the puppets. It's very strange, because I sometimes have said, why don't we just sell them or give them away or something, But it seems like I don't know. It doesn't happen anyway. It seems anathema to do that. So they get nicely filed, and I hope to God they survive. Because latex in particular will just crumble away in time. I can't reach him now. I've got Rocky the Rooster on up a shelf there, and he's doing pretty well actually. That's after 20 years. So look after them well, because the prime example is Morph again, because Morph is made of solid plasticine, and sometimes he'll endure for a long time, for a decade or more, I think. And then other times, for no reason I can work out, he cracks because plasticine, the oil evaporates and leaks out, and he just cracks hard as if he was plaster of Paris.
Somebody suggests an Aardman Museum, perhaps.
I know. Yes, I'm totally in favour. Actually, that's one of the very few areas where Dave and I didn't agree. I was always up for a visitor centre, and Dave was always highly suspicious. I think he was suspicious because his partner worked in museums, and she thought it was like pouring money down the drain. I would love to do it. I would. I'd love to have it in Bristol. And we discussed it. But I tell you, the economics are somewhat terrifying. Yeah, unfortunately. Have you ever been to the Ghibli Museum, John?
Gosh, no.
That's fantastic. Wow, fantastic. Well, that is such a gorgeous place. I mean, that's absolutely inspiring. Having been there once, I'd love to capture some of that.
And is that part of their studio as well, or is it offsite?
No, it's separate. It's offsite. It's offsite. Yeah. It's just done very in a generous spirit. And Mr. Miyazaki-san has a very philosophical approach to what he does, and it's all about celebrating childhood, and that's what the whole museum does. That.
Oh, wonderful. And I suppose, like yourselves, like them, you've got a kind of a house style, and there's a question in here from Liam Prendergast. How do you go about forming your own style? If you're starting off and creating, a style, how best would you go about that?
Wow.
Is it that just comes? Is it just practice? Should you have a variation of styles to draw upon?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's interesting for me, actually, particularly because when people talk about the house style, I think they're mostly thinking of actually Nick Park's style. And Nick does a thing which he's pretty well always done. And it's evolved. Wallace and Gromit look very different now to how they looked 35 years ago. But yeah, so he does what comes natural to him, and it works. I mean, what can you say? Because you see, he doesn't particularly experiment. Now, I do. If you look at my sketchbooks, they're full of random, unless they're about story, they're full of random unconnected doodles in in different styles, and sometimes just for the laugh, I'll try and do something in a sort of manga style, or I'll see an American cartoonist and try to copy it, or I'll see wolf walkers and think, oh, I could do that, and I'll have a go at that. I will do that. And if I'm doing a new project, I would do that as well. Nick's sketchbook doesn't look like that. Every picture in it is absolutely, unquestionably Nick Park. But he certainly experiments with jokes. He works them out in drawing. But how you can do that, I have no answer, actually, honestly, except keep doing it, I suppose, and maybe, you might do what I do and experiment with very different things. I guess experimenting in 2D is a damn sight faster than 3D. Although you can knock up a plasticine maquette of something very quickly if you are working in puppets. I'm afraid to say, unfortunately, it really comes down to kind of luck and unfortunately genius somewhat, because very few people have it, and not many do. But there are superb animators, superb storytellers working in other people's styles, which is kind of the case at Aardman, with loads of animators who would never draw like Nick if they were drawing in their own sketchbooks, have learnt to embrace that special look with the two bug eyes and the big wide mouth.
Yeah. Peter, I could stay and talk to you all day, and I'm sure that everybody here, and it's probably double what we had in Dingle the last time that we spoke, could as well, but we have to move on. But thank you so much, proving once again that you are Lord. Peter, Lord, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you very much, and have a great festival, everybody. That's my message to you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
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 So please join Morris, and as he looks back on 25 years of frameworks at 10:30. Thanks again, Peter.
See ya. Bye now. Bye.